What makes a great movie poster? I have many favourite movie posters, and I actually make official alternative posters for a living. For me, a great poster effectively captures the essence of the movie it represents.
I have the high ground!
But what if you didn't have a movie with a compelling storyline and captivating characters to create an awe-inspiring poster for? What if all you had was an egg, or a pencil, or even a plate with half-eaten toast? So this got me thinking, what if we tried to make a legit movie poster out of an everyday item, like this book? So I thought this would be a fun everyday object to help ease me into the challenge. There should be lots of potential ideas for this one, and the goal is to make sure the object remains the focus and foundation for the poster. I'm already getting the never-ending story vibes. Yeah! So this might be a good direction to go with. Let's crack on and see. Okay, first things first, we need to cut this book out, find a nice general position for it, making sure it's the focus of the piece, and then I think we'll add a bit of styling and colour, so we've got a nice base to build off. Not exactly original, but I think we'll go with the idea of a portal effect, the idea of books transporting us into other worlds. To make a start with that, I think the most obvious thing to do would be to create some intense light in between the pages, and we can just take it from there. Okay, that'll do for a start. Let's add a little bit of lighter blue to help with the transition. We'll set that to overlay and just paint down the middle. A lot of using Photoshop is all about problem solving. Every project is different, and figuring out how to achieve certain effects is all part of the fun. This shard of light's looking a bit weird, so I think we'll just keep it confined to the book pages. Alright, that'll do for a start. Let's add a little bit of smoke and mist down here. This will help add to the atmosphere and also give us a reason to cover up this bottom section of the book, which I'm not too sure what to do with. And we'll add another smoke asset up here, set that to screen, and then just simply stretch that to cover more of the book, and I'll use a soft edge brush to erase the edges. And let's add one more to the center so we can get a bit more texture and detail going on. Something like that. And then I'll create a color fill adjustment layer, choosing a blue, set it to lighten, and just going to use this to tie in some of those colors and lights in the foreground. Okay, that's some pretty bad looking mist and smoke, so definitely coming back to that, but for now, let's move on to the character. Let's cut that out, and then we're going to position them around about here. I want the character to appear as though they're in between the pages, so in order to do that, I think it would be cool to have her reaching one hand out onto the page, and then we can create a bit of shadow, which is going to create that connection. So I think this replacement arm will do nicely. Let's chop that off. And we'll use the pen tool to select and then remove the old arm. Drop in the new one, and then just blend it with the existing character. Tweaking the brightness and contrast. Adjusting the color. Before we continue, you might be wondering where I get a lot of my overlays and assets from seen in this video. Well, look no further. I've just recently released my first fantasy overlays and assets pack. The goal with these was to create the kind of assets I wish I had available to me over the years, focusing on quality over quantity to create some versatile premium overlays. There's some pretty cool stuff in there like dragonfire and meteors, and I've been using these myself to help enhance my client work. So if you're in the market for some unique assets or just want to help support the channel, then head over to the link in the description. And hey, for those of you interested in courses, I've got you covered on that front too. And then I'll just cut out sections of the previous arm so we've got a bit of consistency in the colors and style and texture. Drop it on top and blend that in. Add a few highlights. That's not looking too bad. Now we can make some overall adjustments. Using a color fill adjustment layer to match the mist on the ground, we can brush that in so it looks like she's amongst the smoke. And then a few harsh highlights for the edges. And then we'll add in a few softer blue highlights. We've got this random abstract fire, which I think will be a nice addition to the portal effect. No idea how it's going to look, but I feel like it's worth a try. Set that to screen. We'll make that thinner and move it into the center. And yeah, it looks alright, I don't hate it. This stock asset has some nice defined lines which hopefully will help improve our mist and smoke. And of course we've got to have some of that classic magical dust effect. And there we go. Still not happy with that central portal, just feels a bit lacking, so I'm going to keep building up the effects and trying out different things. Adding some shadow to the hand is going to help connect her to the book and help indicate her position in the piece a lot clearer. Okay, time to fill these pages with some content. They're looking very boring as it is. First we'll go for a classic fantasy styled border, just using the warp tool to get that into position. And then repeat the steps on the other side. And now I've got this nice dragon emblem. I'm going to select those highlights and change the color of those to black. Use the transform tool to scale it down, and then using the warp tool to make it look like it's following the bend of the page. Set it to soft light and just erase some of the edges. Getting ahead of myself here, but I can't resist coming up with a quick title for this imaginary film. So using the never-ending story for inspiration, I'm thinking The Forever Story? Nah. How about EverQuest? That's already a popular game, so let's not do that. The Forever Quest? Yep, that's the one. Now we have the title, I'll just apply a pre-made style. The sizing and positioning of the title needs a bit more work, so I'll come back to that. Right, our book's got no words, so we need to fix that. And now we have a title, let's use everybody's favourite apocalyptic tool, ChatGPT. The prologue to a fantasy book called The Forever Quest. I definitely don't recommend reading it, but that'll do. I've dropped in the words from our story, and again, just going to use the warp tool to get that into position. Not really a fan of these kind of tasks, always find it a bit tricky. Doesn't quite look like it's bending off into the distance enough, but I'm not spending too much time on these, so it'll have to do. And we'll do the same thing on the other page. Chop off a bit from the bottom, and I think that'll have to do. Next, we need some vines, lots of vines. The idea is to have the vines in the foreground, but we also want them to be coming out of the portal, sprawling across the pages of the book. These foreground vines will also act as a nice framing tool for our title once it's in position. I'm just using various fill and adjustment layers to match the colours and lighting of the scene. We want them sort of disappearing off into the mist. We'll add some here, and then I'm going to repeat the same steps, but this time have them coming out of the portal. The lighting setup in this area definitely makes it trickier. Add a bit of shadow. Now using this magical dust asset from my fantasy asset pack. This works well for magical dust or fairies, depending on what you're going for. Almost there now, let's add in some final lighting and color adjustments. And with a bit more tinkering and a few more tweaks, here's what we end up with. So I've beefed up some of the effects and added a bit more detail overall. It's a bit too generic for my liking, but hopefully I managed to capture the right atmosphere and create some intrigue. Okay, this next one's going to be tough, but I'm also excited to try a totally different genre, so let's move on. So for my next object, I'll be using a light bulb. This one's going to be a lot simpler in terms of assets, but more stylized, which creates its own challenges. I'm not personally a fan of the horror genre, so I'll be going for more of a post-apocalyptic / monster movie. Before we introduce the light bulb, I'm just going to do a little bit of background work, just one photo, so really simple. I've got this photo of a derelict building, which will do nicely. I'll apply some Gaussian blur, around about 20, set the layer blending mode to screen, and reduce the saturation to 0. I'll then make some simple brightness and contrast adjustments, until we have something like this. Okay, here's the light bulb. The first thing I need to do is make it transparent. For that, I'll use the color range tool and then select the shadows. Then I'll play around with the sliders until I'm happy with the selection. Click OK. Create a mask to hide the blacks, and then simply paint back in where I want the black to appear. Once that's done, I've got this light bulb holder and cord which we can hang from the top of the image. I want to connect these two, so I'll scale down the size of the light bulb to match the size of the holder. Then use the pen tool to make a selection around the part I don't want and mask it away. Okay, cool. Next, we need to switch this light bulb on. To do that, I'll use a white colour fill layer and a soft round brush to paint in the light. Something like that, not perfect, but it'll work fine for what I'm going to do. Next, I've got this light rays layer which I'm going to position above the bulb, reduce the saturation and set the layer blending mode to color dodge, and just find a nice position. Just making a few changes to the shape. I think a few flies buzzing around attracted to the light might be a nice addition. I've got these flies which I've cut out. I'm just going to duplicate those layers, then set the layer blending mode to color dodge, and that looks pretty terrible. Hopefully adding some motion blur can save us. Alter the levels, then we'll hide the layer and just paint a few back in here and there. Not too bad. Okay, time to introduce our monsters. For those, we're going to use these not so scary looking human hands. Not scary looking yet anyway. I think with the right styling we should be able to make them look a little more unsettling. The first step is to find the general position for each hand. I can finalize these later, I just want to have a rough idea. Okay, something like that will work. And now for the hardest part, lighting the hands. Just to make things even trickier, the lighting on some of these hands is coming from the wrong direction, so that's something I need to fix. I'll start by creating some strong shadows and then repaint in where I want the highlights to be. To create some nice soft glowing highlights, I'll create a new color fill layer, set it to white, and then choose overlay as the blending mode. And with the flow set to about 20, I'm just going to paint where the light's hitting the hands to create a bit of soft glow. And once that's finished, I'll repeat these steps on the other hands until we get something like this. This next step is a simple one, but will play a big part in creating the kind of style that we're going for. It's a simple grain texture which I'll set to overlay, but you can really see the difference it makes with the before and after. And let's get a little bit of smoke texture in there. And here's our character, which we're going to cut out and then place inside the light bulb. We've clearly got some kind of vampire story developing here, and by placing our protagonist inside the light, it's going to further add to this narrative of staying in the light because danger lurks in the darkness. Let's quickly adjust the brightness and contrast, remove any color, and then I'm just going to lightly erase some of the edges to let some of that white behind come through. A bit of Gaussian blur so the edges aren't quite so harsh. And definitely needs a gun strapped across the back, so let's get that in there and give it the same treatment. Just going to make use of those light rays again. And with a bit more work, here's what we end up with. First things first, I'll admit I was a little burnt out after creating the two posters and ran out of creativity when it came to choosing a title for this one. Light will have to do, but otherwise for a pretty simple concept and basic assets, this one didn't turn out too bad. I spent just over an hour on this one, so if I had more time, there'd definitely be a few things I'd improve. Which is your favourite of the two posters? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in my next... Hang on a sec, this feels familiar. Yeah, I've created an I Am Legend poster.